after you became,
So
right after.
sorry. I
No,
just
you're fine.
remembered. Okay.
So I
Go ahead.
am barely in the role of principal, barely. Just that like sink or swim and you finally get there. And then, bam, get a report from the state that we've been identified as a focus school. It's in the bottom 10 to 15% of the state. I called Jan Hasbrook and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got this. And she said, you have to call Patty. Stop talking. She literally said, stop. Like, you don't even have to finish the sentence. You have to call Patty. Hung up, and I had Patty on the phone in less than a minute. It was about 30 seconds. And then, man, she came on site. It was a year-long partnership, years long. And we turned everything around in less than 3 years, all because of Patty. And it was such a blessing, too. As I look back now, what a blessing to meet Patty and get to work with Schools Cubed immediately as a first year principal and learn how to do it effectively from the very beginning. So,
Thank you,
yeah,
Angie.
you're
Very,
welcome. It's
very
so true.
kind. And I
So
remember
true.
every single one of those things crystal clear.
Yeah.
So,
Patty, do you want to add to any of that?
uh, well, I do. I remember, I mean, what I'd like to add is that Angie was a stellar principal and she sopped up anything that I gave her. If I said do this, she would say, "What do you mean? Tell me more. I want to know how I do that." And then what do I do then? And then what do I do then? So she just took it all in. And part of our structure is that we come back in a month, and of course, Angie had done everything I asked her to do or everything I suggested and more. So that's what
Mhm.
makes a great principal. One of the
Thanks,
things that make
Patty.
a great
Thank you.
principal. Absolutely.
Yes, and I will second that to all of you, both of you. It's been a pleasure working with you back in the day. When my first year I retired, became a consultant, and that's how I met both of these ladies.
And Donna, I remember something about you that I'd like to add. I
Okay.
remember going to, you and I had chatted, I don't remember what the circumstances, but before that, or when we met actually for the very first time, we went to lunch. Do you remember? And and Donna said, "I'm going to start a Facebook page
Yes.
so that people learn about the science of reading. They should be learning this in college." So I remember that. I don't know if you remember that
I
conversation, but
don't.
you
Yeah.
said it right
Well,
there at
look and
lunch.
look what happened.
Look what happened.
Thanks for sharing that. So we're going to start off. I want to talk about most books on literacy instruction are geared toward teachers. Why did you write this book for principals and district leaders on literacy? Either one of you can take that.
Well, I know from all the work with Patty Montgomery, now the research that she shared with me, that this work in schools, transforming literacy for all, really rises and falls on leaders and on leadership. And we know that, and I'm sure Patty will share later, but we know that schools and districts need instructional leaders, leaders who can have an instructional focus and truly lead the work and transform instruction in the district and have a focus. And so the book goes into the importance of creating and sustaining systems and structures. And that is done by a building and district leader.
Hmm.
And so the book's really a how-to guide for how to do that. So we can't it's great for teachers to get the information and know what they need to do in the classrooms for literacy and to reach all students. But it honestly, I've learned it just does not happen if you don't have a building and district leader leading the work.
Yeah,
It's
I'd like to add a
absolutely
little
true.
bit to that, and that is that, across the country, I mean, we all know, anybody who's on this knows how woeful reading outcomes are. And so the thought has been, well, we'll just we'll give teachers professional development in the science of reading, and
Yep.
that'll do it. But here's the thing. That's only one little piece. Angie and I illustrate in the book cogs on a wheel, and that was in the first book as well. But unless we have professional development in line and data analysis, all of those things in line, outcomes don't change. And creating a data analysis structure isn't on the back of a teacher, it's on the back of a principal. Having a schedule where all students can receive intervention, that's not up to a teacher, that's up to the principal. So there's lots of things that are up to a principal to enact, not the teacher. And further, the items that we do in a science of reading, like data analysis, and interventions are drastically different in a science of reading world than they are in a balanced literacy world. So it's incumbent upon the principal to know how to do all of those things, not the teacher. Although the teacher needs to get good professional development as well.
Correct. I am in the middle of typing up your name of your book
Oh,
because I want everyone to go to Amazon and pre-order it if you can. It's called It's Possible, a Leadership Plan for Implementing Quality Reading Instruction and Ensuring Literacy for All.
and you know what? We can put the link in and
Yeah, that'd be great.
I will.
That'd be great. Okay, so you both talk about systems and structures, and for years I was like, okay, what is that? Give us some details about what that looks like in a school. Either one of you.
Well, I always think of it as a house. A house has a structure around it, and then it's got lots of systems that are running behind the scenes. So a system is that collection of parts. In a house, it's all the different plumbing pieces that go behind the walls. In a school, and then the structure is it's that collection that makes people behave a certain way. So as an example, if you have an urgency in order to increase literacy outcomes, that might be the structure that we want, an urgency to create literacy outcomes. Then we need lots of systems that support that. An intervention system, and what supports an intervention system? A good quality school schedule supports an urgency structure. So it's the pieces that go together to support the overall structure. So another one is collaboration. That's the structure that we need. So what are all those systems like data analysis, lesson planning, grade level planning that support the structure of collaboration? So professional development is another structure. In fact, all of the pieces in the book are really the structures, and within it, we talk about the systems that go into creating the structure.
Angie, do you want to add to that?
I'm just sitting here listening to it, and it's just beautiful. Like when you hear it all, and when you get those pieces in place, I just started thinking. I mean, it's like a well-oiled machine, and you can't have the collaboration if you aren't collaborating to review the data and look at data. And when you have data-based decision making, that's going to impact universal instruction. I mean, and then once these are set up, the systematic part of it is just continuous school improvement. I mean, they all work together, and as I love to hear her talk about it. I love, I love to hear her talk about it because it just completely transforms the school. It really does.
I've witnessed it. I will attest to that. So Angie, not Angie, Patti, tell us about I'm going to say the name of your company, Schools Cubed. It didn't dawn on me where the cubed came from.
Yes.
So we all know we're not math majors, but we know cube means 3 to the 3rd power. And so we need the science, we need the structure, and we need the systems. Isn't that just the most clever name for a company?
Yes.
Yes.
Schools Cube does stand for System Structures in the Science of Reading. And it is all 3 of those things that create higher literacy outcomes for students.
And so often, and I see this on the Facebook group and with teachers and with districts, they figure that, oh, we are going to get a new curriculum and that's going to be the answer.
Bingo.
Right. Yep. And we know that's why they have failure and they go, see, it didn't work. We'll go back to the old way, as if that worked. Right? So
Yeah.
it's really important that you do all three things in order to get results.
Yeah.
And that,
What,
oh,
go ahead. No,
no,
you go,
no, you go.
Angie.
No,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say this, you're exactly right, Donna. If we don't get this right,
Yes, yes.
we'll all go
Mhm.
back to what it was, and everyone will say,
Right.
look, that didn't work either. There are 5 states, the last time I checked, could be 6 by now, that emphasize that principals get, or that have some piece of legislation that say principals need to have training in the science of reading.
Oh my
And
gosh,
that's
yes.
great. But what people are not understanding are, again, is that those systems and structures also need to be put in place. And they're entirely different systems and structures that need to
Mhm.
be implemented in a science of reading type approach to literacy than there are in a balanced literacy approach to literacy. And so if we don't get these principals trained up on what they need to be doing, we will go back because everyone will say it didn't work. So,
Right, right.
Angie, were you going to
That
add to
was,
that?
I was just thinking, that's actually a fear of mine. And Patty and I've talked about this before
Mhm.
because I worry that when we say the science of reading, that people in their heads think buy new curriculum. But we didn't say that. We said the science of reading, the science the teachers need to implement in the room so that they know how students learn to read. My fear is that schools will do this out of compliance. Teachers need to be trained in science of reading. Check compliance. We did it.
Right.
And then, or they'll say purchase new reading curriculum. Check. We did it. And then, like we've mentioned a few minutes ago, they'll say, well, we tried that and it did not work. But if we do not get the message out to leaders, what the leadership role is in that building, then it's not going to happen. And I feel like they think too, I feel like there are educators that think they hear science of reading and think it's a one and done. If
What
I get one
100%.
speaker to come in, one and done, the teachers
Yeah.
then know what they need, and then it's okay, let them go. No, once they start that work, they're going to need coaching and support. They're going to need mentoring. The building leaders
Mhm.
are going to have to be in that room, see what's going on, give the feedback back to the teachers so that the growth can continue. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel that we've got to get this right. There's momentum behind it right now. Oh, and I desperately want us to get it right.
Yeah.
And
And
Patty's book, the book will help that. Go ahead.
well, just continuing with what you said, Donna, I mean, they do one of two things, or they sometimes do both things, give them professional development, give them a new curriculum. But, so many of the curriculum out there, publishers want to please everybody. So you could take a balanced literacy route using the same curriculum in another, and you could take a science of reading approach in the exact same curriculum. So if someone isn't monitoring what they're doing in that curriculum,
Yes.
we're not any better. And so that feedback from the principal on how do you implement the curriculum, even if you've been trained in the science of reading, is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, you used to use a model, Patty, and you used your grandson's little wheels.
Oh, I've
Do you
got it
remember
right.
that? Do you have that right there?
I do. It's a little torn, but yeah, I
I
think my dog chewed
loved.
it. Sorry.
I just love that concept though, because I'll explain what it was. It was cogs. You know how cogs, if you turn one wheel, it turns the other. Well, that's exactly what this is all about. These systems are interrelated, and you can't do one without the other. And you can't just expect one to carry the load for all of them.
Right.
So what I see are principals who really don't have the expertise, so they're going to rely on their staff to do the work. And then so you got all these teachers that are, you know, crazily trying to get all this training done and implement it in the classroom. And then things fall apart because one of the systems isn't working, their MTSS system isn't working or isn't even in place, or the schedules are not optimized. I mean, there's so
Sure.
many cogs that have to work together to make this work. And I really, really think the principles are the key to this. I mean,
Oh,
there's research to support that.
and I have to say a bit more about what you said, Donna. I mean, the principals just let the teachers do it. Well, here's another thing we've created in our country in this whole science of reading thing. Remember, I said 5 states make it mandatory that
Right.
principals have to be trained. So now, guess what? They fear a phoneme. They know the teacher's talking about phonemes. And so now they're even more frightened to go in and give instructional feedback because they think, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know. So we literally see more principals avoiding the classroom now, particularly during time, and they say, oh, it's behavior. But I'm telling you, they fear a phoneme. So they don't go in. And now we put even more emphasis on the instructional coach to get it done. Well, that's another problem because the instructional coach isn't evaluative. And so the good
Mhm.
teachers want instructional coaching, not the poor teachers. So we've created a system or systems in our schools, a structure that says, I'm not going to go in there. I'm afraid the instructional coach has to do it. And now 50% of my teachers are just getting worse and not better.
Yeah.
So we got to think
Add to
about
that.
this.
Can I add to that, please?
Please.
Absolutely.
So I was the instructional coach in the district for 3.5 years. Had done the science of reading training, had done differentiated instruction. We had Jan Hasbrook in there. I mean, and they knew all the pieces and components. One of the teachers that sat in all of those and gave me the best feedback was my best friend, Christy Kennedy, who we had been coworkers together, side by side rooms. And she had even come in my room and said, what are you doing in here? Because you're getting different results than I'm doing next door. She was passionate about every single bit of professional development that she had received for 3.5 years. I then moved back to the building with her, where I had been a teacher out of the building for 4 years, come back. And I was stunned because these teachers were the ones who were my closest friends. I was stunned that they weren't doing the practices that we had talked about. And I finally went to Christy because she says everything like it is. And I knew she'd be honest with me. And I'm like, why are people not doing it? I just don't understand it. You said in the training, you said you loved it. It really changed your mind frame about instruction. Christy sat and thought, and she said, you know what? I honestly think it has to be. There's been no expectation
Mm.
to implement. And that
Wow.
was when I learned so much then from that. Teachers are waiting for the principals and leaders to do this. They need it. There had never been an expectation. And she said, when I really think about it,
It's important.
I think we took all
Expectations.
of those as suggestions. And it was a
Oh,
great presentation. But,
yeah.
and she said, I would go back on a few other things and I would start and do it. But then I would run into a question. And then I just immediately went right back to what I had done and what I knew. And so, I mean, there's an outcry, I think, from teachers that they need leaders who can step up. Because when they try this work, there will be questions.
You know what? We've got some excellent
We
commentary in
we
the
do.
chat
I've
that
been
I want.
watching.
Really?
Yeah, I really want to talk about this. Our school is doing letters. This is from Deb Cock. Our school is doing letters training this year and next. So now before I retire, I'm praying we get an instructional coach that knows what they're doing, I might add.
And just remember, it's not an instructional coach's job. I mean, that's one step, and I'm thrilled that
Right.
you're getting an instructional coach. But there's so many other pieces that need to get done. It's not just coaches.
That's right. And here's another one. Coaches can't be the evaluator. Amen.
They
That's
can't.
right. Or
Cannot.
principals leave it to the assistant superintendent, curriculum director, to handle. This is my life.
But you
Oh,
know what else? The teachers can't do the systematic change.
they can't.
Right.
I was
No.
a teacher and I was implementing the science of reading, and I had been trained by the very best. I mean, my 90 minutes had been broken down minute by minute by Dr. Vicki Gibson. And I was using Wonders. I mean, it was the perfect model that Jan Hasbrook and Vicki Gibson had given me that. But the only thing that was changing was the data for my students. And teachers can't
Yes.
go out,
Yes.
an instructional coach cannot go out and say, well, guess what? This is what's going to be done in this whole school. It takes the school leader, and it honestly takes
Mhm.
district leaders that are knowledgeable too, because then they know the support the instructional leaders need. They know what professional development that the leaders need, and then they're going to be making the decisions to pay for those changes and to get all of that started. But it cannot be done by teachers, and it cannot be done by the instructional coaches. They do play an important role in all of
Right.
it.
Again,
Yeah.
the cogs, we all have a job to do in the
Yep.
system, right?
Yes.
Here's one
Yes.
from Mary Newton, a good friend of mine in
I
Oh,
saw.
Wisconsin.
hey,
Hello, Mary.
Mary.
One of the biggest districts, Wisconsin's biggest districts, put everyone through letters and thinks they're done. This is the danger of starting this
Yeah.
journey without knowledgeable outside consultation. It is so
It
true.
I just saw Mary's other one. And it was, and what
Yep.
about state level leadership, lack of knowledge? And it's funny, I want to speak to that because when I was a principal, I used to say, oh, we've got to get all principals trained. Principals need to know these things. And then when I was at the district, I said, oh my gosh, my fellow district leaders need to know what to do. And then when I went to the state, Mary, I said, oh my gosh, everybody at the state level needs to do this and understand what they're doing. So, absolutely, we're not done until everyone understands not only the science of reading, but the systems and structures that need to change so dramatically from a balanced literacy approach to a science of reading approach. That's when we'll get this right.
Mm-hmm.
Country's at
Okay.
34%. We're basically sitting at 34% proficiency.
Right?
We know 95% is possible. I remember when I first heard the 95, and I thought I heard it from Jan Hasbrook for the very first time. And I'm like, why doesn't everyone just do that? And that's where we're at. I mean, we know the formula. It's the systems and structures piece. That's what
Yep.
needs to be done in every school. It can be
Mm-hmm.
replicated in every single school, and we can fix the national epidemic problem. So,
Yep.
It's just, I've learned a lot in the last 5 years doing this Facebook group, and what I have learned is that this is such a massive undertaking of such magnitude. It's almost hard to fathom of how many schools and human beings are involved in this change. It's really hard. I mean, it's going to take decades to change this. I really believe that.
Oh, I do too. And we can't let it go back in the meantime.
No,
It's got to
no.
be a continual momentum.
So let's talk a little bit about transformational leadership. Let's talk about that. Patty, what do
Yeah.
you think?
Yes.
So you don't
So
mention it in your book. Tell us why.
yeah, well, it gets a brief mention. It gets a brief mention with what's wrong with it. And so I
First,
so
can you
here,
explain what that
yes.
is?
Yes, transformational leadership is about more about having a vision, which I agree with, and emotional connections with staff, and all of that is wonderful. But there's been a lot of research on what is the best kind of educational leadership. What should principals be doing? And I could go on and on about that, but I
Mm-hmm.
won't. I'll try to focus. And so, too many schools, in fact, I get irritated because many of my fellow science of reading folks who promote leadership use a transformational model. Well, I have to tell you that a transformational model in just one study has an effect size of about 0.11 to outcomes for students, to learning outcomes for students. in that same study, an instructional leadership has an effect size of about 0.46. I've seen endless research studies on instructional leadership versus other types of educational leadership. And instructional leadership, where the principal is close to instruction by giving feedback, by observing, by analyzing data, always outperforms any other type of educational leadership. So when you see anyone from the science of reading touting transformational leadership, you know that they haven't dug into the research. I mean, so that's critical. We can't just say that the research needs to be about reading. No, the research also needs to be about what good principals do. And there's lots and lots of research out there. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel or loosey-goosey about this either. So anyway.
When I found out from the state that our school had been identified as a focus school, I had, as a first year principal, was also going to get the first year principal leadership training model. But then I went into a separate program for all the people who were in the bottom 15%. The only thing I heard about leadership, all my training was transformational leadership. Now, and that was write a vision, write a mission statement, guiding beliefs. I did all of that work though with Pati Montgomery too. But the thing about it is, a vision's great and you need that for the school, but it doesn't stop there. So, for an example, I had been in a building that was coaching. I was in there to coach teachers, and their vision was on the wall with like the vinyl letters, beautiful. And I mentioned, oh, but I had a first year teacher by me. And I said, that is so beautiful. Do you guys talk about that? She's like, oh, yeah, like that's up there, but I forget what it even says. Okay, so it's so much more than that. But if I had only had the model of leadership training from the state, I don't believe we would have ever exited the focus school status. And we did it so quickly because of the systems and structures work. And there's a report out there that I found out from Pati that now I've done with case study with building leaders I've worked with. And it's the Wallace Foundation report. And there's a sentence in there that was a massive takeaway for me as a leader. It was that instructional leaders are having instructional conversations. They're in the rooms and they're having instructional conversations, not just saying, well, I am an instructional leader because I chose the instructional focus or I lined up science of reading training for the teachers. No, highly effective leaders are engaging in instructional conversations that are directly impacting either student or teacher knowledge or student achievement. That's what we need.
Powerful.
Oh, Pati, you're muted.
Is your dog barking, Pati?
He was, sorry.
No worries. I got one too, but she's being quiet. She's cooperating.
Somebody asked for that research, and it's from 2008, and it's a meta-analysis on instructional leadership. The author starts with a K. I think it's Kane, Kane, but I don't remember. But I can get that, Donna. And
okay, you could give that to me, and I can send that out with the recording. Okay, very good. In our pre-call, we talked about the six
domains.
You want to talk about those?
Yes. So in the book, it's possible. And not only in the book, but also in it was Schools Cubed. We evaluate or assess, thank you, Donna, much better word, on how schools are doing in these 6 areas, because these 6 areas align greatly to the research on what effective schools and what effective principals do. Part of that is the research that Angie was just talking about, the meta-analysis that the Wallace Foundation came out with in 2021. So when we're looking at schools, we are not only looking at the science of reading research, but the research on what effective schools and effective principals do. And there are 6 domains, we call them, that need to be in place in order to increase literacy outcomes for students. Of course, the first one is universal instruction. Are they getting good literacy instruction? So that's the first one. The second one is assessments. Are we using and do we have a comprehensive assessment plan and using good quality assessments to measure how kids are doing in reading? The third one is interventions. Now that we know who's doing well and who isn't, are we progress monitoring and doing all of those things and providing interventions to students? The fourth one is data-based decision making. Are we analyzing the data? And then the next one is professional
PD.
development. And that's not just about stand and deliver professional development. That's ongoing. How do we keep our knowledge up to make sure that we're staying up with the research and using the research? And then the last one is collaboration, because I'm a big believer that this shouldn't be done to teachers. This should be done with teachers. So those are the big domains that we believe need to be solidly in place in schools. And that's what Angie had in place to get to 100% of kids at grade level.
That's true. Yep. And that's what you do when you go into schools. You look at these systems and these domains and see how they're functioning. Correct.
Yep. We put those in. Each domain is a structure. And then again, the small things that go into that are the systems.
Sure. I know when I was working in Wisconsin and the school got its first score and it was brutal. It was dismal. It was not good. But you know, it gives you something to work for. And you know, good leadership is what changed that district.
Absolutely. And people do go, oh my gosh, we have a horrible score. But it's exactly what you said, Donna. It's not a score, it's what we need to work on. It's, where are we going from here?
Exactly.
And I talk about too, accepting the data, like where are we? John Addie's questions, where are we? Where are we going? How close are we to reaching that goal? The staff that I worked with, we were at 15% proficiency in literacy, and it was so hard to accept. I did a quick activity and I had 15% on a big sticky chart. And then, okay, why would we get a 15%? And it was, well, students don't have support at home. They come to us unprepared. And it was all these things, 100% free lunch. Then I unrolled one that said 95%. How would we get 95% if that truly is possible? Teachers would do this, teachers would do this, teachers would do this. I'm like, so wait a minute. 15 students have, 95 teachers have. It's the same. This one is because of our instruction. This one's because of our instruction. How are we reviewing data? So I like to say we have to radically accept the 10%, the 13%, the 25%, wherever we are, because we're not going to stay there. When you do this work, it is not going to stay there. Those numbers are going to continuously drive up higher and higher. But if we don't radically accept the 13 and the 15s, then we can't accept and own the 95.
Yep.
And I think, everyone needs to know they have onus in this. Every single person in that building, in that system, in that district is responsible for the results they're getting. You can't be finger pointing at
100%. It does say it's everyone's responsibility.
It's everyone's responsibility. I want to go back because there was a question. I'm sorry, we're kind of backtracking here from Kathleen McCaffrey from New Hampshire. Thoughts on distributed leadership?
Distributed leadership. I mean, I believe strongly in distributive leadership, and that comes along with collaboration. And one of the things that we recommend putting in place is a building leadership team exactly for distributive leadership. It's my opinion that distributed leadership is embedded in instructional leadership. So that's how I look at it. I don't know the effect size of just distributive leadership, but I do know that it's when a piece of instructional leadership, it's highly effective.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so Go ahead. You have something to say?
Well, I just saw in the chat box, and I was going to see if Patty might want to address. Is that okay? Many schools and districts are currently struggling with teacher retention and fear that we will lose teachers if we pile, we hear this all the time, too much on their plates. How do you handle this from a leadership perspective? So we talk about that a lot. Patty, do you want to take
Oh
that?
man, this is one of our regular
It
conversations,
is. It's one of my
Angie.
favorite ones too. Yeah. And
Well,
I
yeah.
got this yesterday, actually. I was in a school, I got that yesterday. Patty, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and we'll be brief because this is a hot topic for Angie and I. We could go on this forever. First of all, who said teaching was easy? I mean, when we signed up for teaching, did we sign up for easy? And that's a shame if we did, because it's about kids. It's not about easy. I do believe that the other thing is a good instructional leader in your building. You have to be able to weigh. I mean, put the pressure on. I've said this to Angie 1,000 times. Know when to accelerate, know when to let the pedal off. And so you have to feel the staff or they will rebel on you. I mean, we don't want to hurt teachers. We want to promote teachers. So you have to, as a building principal, be able to feel what's going on. But we have to also take ownership of our outcomes. In our system, when you work with us, we do it in little bits and pieces. We can't expect this to turn around in 1 year. It won't. It literally takes 3 to 5 years. And so we do take it in pieces so it isn't so piled up. I did an interview with the Measured Mom about what it's like to do a Schools Cubed initiative in your school. And it is take it fast, take it slow, take it fast, take it slow. So, Angie, what were you going to add?
Yes, I'd like to add to that because one of the things that when you do this model, you focus on one thing at a time.
Yes.
And we have it. The word initiatives and education has become so big. And now we're the same way of initiative fatigue. Well, yeah, because it changes all the time.
Yep.
You go to a PD session or a conference, someone comes back and they have a new initiative. But this is doing it, it's a strategic order of what you do. And the steps are laid out in the book. And you do one thing at a time. And you wait until you have 85% of staff doing it 85% of the time. And that's all the leaders giving feedback on that one thing until 85% of the people are doing it 85% of the time. My experience, though, I always hear about too much on teachers. I can tell you that this work in my experience, even with coaching and support for other districts and schools, it actually takes things off the teacher's plate because when I became a principal, there were 7 resources in place being used in the literacy block. 7 resources that teachers were having to use and get that all into their planning, which then when we stepped back and went to one comprehensive program and using it completely, it took so much pressure off of teachers. They were doing one thing and they were being told how to do it correctly, coached and supported and lifted up to get that done. So I think when you do it right, we actually are not adding on teachers. And also,
So
I think it
true.
takes off a ton of pressure when you tell a teacher how to be effective, because I think that's what every single teacher wants to hear. What do I need to do to be effective? And I'll just do that. Go ahead, Patty.
You're just killing me because I'm just, you're so right. In the book, we say that in order to get there, it's about less, not more. And
Yes.
education is just renowned for looking for that silver bullet. And we've got to stop looking for silver bullets and doing specific things better. Angie's right. We're not piling on. If we do this right, we're actually removing. Thank you, Angie, for that little reminder.
You're welcome. And we find out what is needed and what's necessary and what's important and what's effective and what has an impact and what doesn't. And we do less of the things that are ineffective and we do more of the things that are effective. So
a lot of your work is reflected from John Hattie, correct? And his findings on effective
Uh,
practices.
Yeah, I would say in instruction, a lot of, but not all of it. The other thing, as we talked about earlier, the part on principles comes from the Wallace Foundation,
Mhm.
research on instructional leadership. And also there's research on what effective schools do that are part of what we talk about a lot.
Okay, excellent. All
The
right,
book
we have
does
like,
address, though, the book does address tier one instruction and the importance of it, and that you can't intervene your way out of a tier one problem.
right.
And so, for that tier one instruction, the science of reading tells us instruction has to be two things: explicit and systematic. And so, then,
Mhm.
that's addressed as well.
Yeah. This book is going to be amazing if it's utilized. It has the potential to change results for many, many, many schools.
Thank you, Donna.
So
Yeah.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Because I've seen it. I've seen it happen.
Donna
So
saw it. Well,
I'm not
and
just making this up.
and she saw the book.
This is proof in the muffin. Proof in the muffin. So
Love that, Donna.
let's open it up to anyone who wants to ask questions, make comments, share your happy days, your sad days, anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, questions. I'd love to have questions and
Yes.
answers.
For those of you you should copy the chat. There's a lot of references here. There's a lot. So go to the three dots at the top of your chat and you can download the chat and keep that because our viewers are sharing lots of great information. Anyone else have any questions, comments?
Saw one that I'd like to toss at Patty. That someone said they worry about principals not being present at PLCs. And
Oh,
Mhm.
I'd also like to add data team meetings to that. Patty, you want to address that?
I will, but I think you should address that,
Okay,
Angie,
I can
because
address
you
that.
love
Okay,
that.
I do love that. And in a data meeting, or the PLC, when we come together, if we don't have leaders in there as part of those discussions, how do they know what's going on in the building? It requires the leader keeping, I've learned this phrase from Patty, a laser-like focus on the data and what is going on in the building so that we know the next step that the teachers need, then what support they need, what coaching they need. But if the leader's not in those meetings and also in the professional development trainings, just want to add that in, then it's still not going to be effectively done and effectively implemented. And then, two, the leaders are in there to help lead those discussions. That's where the instructional leadership piece comes from. But the data, I said when I was a superintendent, the principal said we were trying to pick a date for the next data team meeting. We had to make a change from our assessment calendar. And so he said, I'm like, I won't be here that day. And he's like, well, can't we do it without you? You absolutely cannot. I have to be in there to see that. No, leaders need to be present in those meetings because I can tell you, as a teacher myself, I had been in quote unquote collaboration or collaborative meetings, and there was no collaboration on instruction. There was collaborative complaining, collaborative blaming, but there wasn't truly conversation in collaborative nature of like, this is what I'm doing to get results. This is what you're doing in your room to get results. Here's what a learning intentionalness standard might look like. And then really keeping those. And I think as leaders too, we have to give teachers a purpose for those meetings and an outcome. What do we want with an agenda? Patty, I know you're dying to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, there is some beliefs out there that principals shouldn't attend PLC meetings. I mean, I've literally worked in districts where they say principals shouldn't attend PLC meetings. And I'm just stymied by that. Why would you not want to so that you know what your teachers are planning? Somebody put in the chat, and I think that this is true, that both data team and PLC meetings are conflated. I conflate them. There is a lot of confusion out there about which is which. Unfortunately, I see a lot of PLC meetings, as my good friend Donna Bright used to say, fraught with potential disaster. They aren't being monitored, they aren't being checked, and it is, as Angie said, I don't know how you just said that, Angie, collaborative complaining, is that
Yes.
that is what's going on. So, and principals shouldn't do it to monitor complaining. What they should be doing it for is so that, okay, this is our discussion. Now, what do I see in regards to that discussion when I walk into the classroom?
And I will say, every data team, and also then even like a grade level collaboration time with common planning helped me know as building and district leader where I needed to be the next week. If there was a grade level or one intervention person and they've got two groups and they're really not making progress, I knew that's where I needed to be to watch. But then at a grade level meeting, teachers can come up and say, like, okay, now that I've got my 6-week progress monitoring data and I'm looking and students stagnant, what do I need to do at that small group? That then we need someone in the room watching that to give the coaching and support that the teacher needs. And how do we know how to coach and best support our teachers if we aren't in there listening to those conversations? And I do say we don't need to look at this as evaluative. That's
No.
not what this is. It's what information does that teacher need to hear from us so that they can have an impact on the student learning and achievement that's going on.
And Donna, I'm sorry. Angie, you shouldn't put Angie and I on something together. We can't stop. However,
You have 7 minutes.
Okay, I'll hurry. Here's one of the things that I want to say that principals say to me a lot. Well, I can't be in the classroom observing. I can't be giving feedback because I have so many behavioral issues. And I get it that we have behavioral issues, but when a principal is in the classroom routinely, and when students know that the principal is going to show up somewhere, guess what happens to behavior? It drops in a New York second. And many of our principals, shout out to Frank Bellamo, who probably isn't on here, but so many of our principals, they buy carts. And
I was just going to say that. I saw that on a reel. This is how he had a cart.
Yes. And so they put their computers on a cart. One of them, I love this one. It has like a cup for her, or a holder for her coffee. And literally school day occurs on a cart. Emails are taken care of in the morning and in the afternoon. Kids see them all of the time. It's a totally different atmosphere. I honestly think that school districts need to be transforming, and their custodial staff, we need to have one person over 4 schools building custodial wise, and then the principal can stop worrying about that as well. And instructional focus can be the number one thing from the principal. Right.
Because like you say, when you take care of instruction and get kids achieving, the behaviors plummet. I know, Angie, you had data for that.
Yes. So if you have explicit instruction going on, and I'm talking about, like, think of Dr. Anita Archer's explicit instruction with high engagement, students don't have time to misbehave.
No.
You'll still have some that you need to have a conversation with and go over the expectations for them. But when teachers are truly getting all students engaged, behavior rates start dropping. 2 years before I became principal, the school had over 275 discipline referrals. The year before I became principal, over 325 discipline referrals. We put the focus on learning and getting those students engaged
100%.
and getting them exactly what they needed. We had 20 discipline referrals the first year, 5 the second, and then we went 0, 0, 1, 0. Because they're so engaged in the learning, they didn't want to miss it. They even stopped asking to go to the bathroom as often or to the nurse as often because they did not want to leave that classroom or that instruction. I had a hard time leaving the classroom and the instruction. It was so great.
Archerisms are the key to classroom management. Love it.
Archerisms.
All right. Anyone else? This is such great instruction and conversation. I love it. All right, folks. Thank you for giving up part of your morning, Saturday mornings. Explicit instruction, yeah. Behavior, yes. Okay. Watch for the book. When's that coming out? Soon?
Yes, third week I did put a link to the book in the chat.
Okay.
It should be available the third week of November. It's getting very
Ooh.
close. I know.
So everybody put that on your Christmas wish list, and maybe Santa will be good to you. And
Just add, the book is literally a step-by-step guide for how to do this work. And it's not just, oh, well, this is the work you need to do. No, it specifically tells you how that needs to be done, what it looks like, what it sounds like. And then at the beginning of each chapter, you get the story of how it was done at Matthews. So this is what it looked like. And we talk about what was hard and what was, was doable. But then Patty goes into all the research. But Schools Cubed had what's called a literacy evaluation tool, where Patty would come in and give you the next steps. She has now provided all of us that in this book.
wow,
You just go
that's
through.
huge.
You find where you are on the rubric, and guess what? You look right next to it to see what your next steps are.
Somebody asked for the name of the book.
Name of the book.
One more time.
It's possible.
It's possible, but it has a tagline.
Yes, it does.
The tagline is so long that I don't even know it. So just put in Montgomery and It's Possible or Hanley.
We've got time. I'm scrolling to it. It was at the beginning.
Yeah, it's at the beginning. What I'd really like to see is
it's possible, a leadership plan for implementing quality reading instruction and ensuring literacy for all. That's what it's called.
So folks that are on, make this a book study for your team, your members, especially your leaders, of course, your leaders, even if you can go as high as the district level. These folks need to learn this stuff, and why not, right? Let's get her done. And it's so exciting to see when schools are doing the work and the results they get. It's a moment to be proud of. Okay, folks, thank you for coming. Watch
Donna,
for an email. Yes, Patty.
Can I just say one more thing? You said
You bet.
Maybe somebody will buy it for you for Christmas. Here's a suggestion for any teachers out there. Buy it for your principal and put it on their desk.
Love it.
Anyway.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you,
it's always
everyone.
a pleasure.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks for giving us even the chance for the three of us to have such good conversation this morning. Yeah. So thank you. It was a joy to be here. Thanks, Patty.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. All righty. Bye-bye.
Donna, how do I copy that whole chat? That was exciting. How do I do that?
Okay, go to the top, look under chat.
Okay.
Wait, I have to stop recording.